Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of y'all and peace out to the rest of you. I must have tried to record this several times and I tried to keep it short, but it's a lot to unpack and a lot to unravel. I don't know how long this is going to be at this time, but by the time you've clicked on it, you can see the length. But you can see the title. And I'm going to start by saying that in the Manosphere, I don't have a choice but to be one-sided, militant, all or nothing fight to win. Because in Manosphere, I'm addressing the gender war that men did not start, but was started against specifically black men. I do acknowledge that white Western men have had something similar done to them. I just leave it up to them to solve. They're going to fix it their own selves, because the same ones who have the sense to realize that this is being done to them and the women to sympathize with them are still hypocrites, because they'll sit up and say, never forget 9/11, and then tell us you niggers get over slavery. No, shuck that fit. You provoked 9/11, or rather your leaders did. Innocent people, yours and mine, died as a result of this. But even then, the ones that you provoked didn't even carry it out. How do we know? That's another recording for another day. But no, the ones blamed for it didn't carry it out. How 6 of them gonna be dead anyway? 6 of them already passed away, or they were in other locations, clear as cut. But that's another topic for another recording on another day, if I even get around to it. See, in the Manosphere, we may have to be this way. Those of you who clicked because you heard me say Goldensphere, bear with me, because this is where it is that I begin to address you and tell you what this has to do with you. The Goldensphere is begun and largely populated by more women than men, but both of whom are majority against the gender war that is plaguing the larger black community from which we come. There may be a day one day when someone says, how can you be Manosphere and Goldensphere? And to that I say, well, I don't see the mutual exclusivity, but it's up to Goldensphere people if I'm actually Goldensphere, if I'm a sideline commentator, sympathizer. It's up to you to decide. Either way, doesn't matter to me. Point is, being in both ain't mutually exclusive. Here's why. Like me, anyone else can be equally in favor of men not losing, if not outright winning, the gender war that was started against them, as far as the Manosphere is concerned, and equally be against that same gender war being drug into this new golden sphere, a relatively new golden sphere. That's why. And that's exactly where I stand. In the wider black community, I don't want the men to lose the gender war. Absolutely not. In the golden sphere, I don't want this gender war to start or to spill over and begin. That's the other reason. And so what I say to you is, for your benefit, maybe mine, maybe not, I don't know, but certainly for your benefit, even if I don't derive any benefit from this, because the golden sphere's cause is not hatred, it's not just division, and it's not elitism of any form, because we're not walking around saying that there's anything elite about shades or hair textures or other aspects of phenotypes or genotypes for that matter. We simply say children and adults should not go through the experience of being blamed for things that they did not do and maybe someone else did or did not do because of appearance. That's it. That's what we say. We say the same thing for people of an abundant melanin count. They likewise should not be blamed. And I've heard many of you say this, so this is made pretty much clear cut. You don't even want children who are abundantly melanated to go through a situation in which they are blamed for things they did or did not do. It's just that you can't build that safe space for them per se, because it wouldn't be theirs if you built it. And they wouldn't see it as theirs and know that it was theirs, and they wouldn't know it was safe, even if you intended it. Whereas if you built it for you, then there's no question as to what its intent is and the actual safety. You believe that children and adults should not experience this. I believe the same thing. And that children, of course, every kid's going to be blamed for something they didn't do in life, because that's a part of it. But we do believe that they should have a place where it's not a hyper likelihood of it. They should have a location in which that's not going to be the usual case, and that should be where they live. That's why I don't call against the cause, and I understand why you would call for it, and I will give advice that can help you if you take it. That's my goal. That's my intention. And one of the things, the matter of fact, the first bit of advice I would have to say, the first bit, because this goes hand in hand with what I said previously about if LSM don't differentiate themselves from Western women. This is the bigger explanation of that. This recording here. What I'm going to say now is that the gender war that you and I don't want spilling over into the Goldensphere and restarting there is actually likely to do so, not because of whom one would think intuitively will do it. I, as a man, a straight man, don't have an interest in you having a gender war. I, as a straight man, actually have an interest in you not having the same gender war. Because I have an interest in no one having it, and I have an interest in there not being a gender war. Straight women have an interest in there not being a gender war, but Western women are primed and socialized and conditioned to fight a gender war or participate in it or aid in it against men. The basis for that being what men used to do in the past, whether they did it or not, whether it was common or whether it was rare. Now, ladies, this is addressed mostly to you, because we men already know what to do if you find a man that's going to try to drag this gender war with him into the Goldensphere. And we also know that we don't have such an interest. Even men that are not straight don't have an interest in there being a gender war. So straight men definitely have an interest in there not being one. So in other words, our base is generally covered. Gentlemen, I'm not saying for us to slack off on our end and amongst our ranks. I'm simply saying that right now, the threat ain't coming from our direction. The threat's not coming from many of the women as far as I know in the Goldensphere, but I do know of 4 or 5. I say 4 or 5 because one, I don't know if she's actually Goldensphere or if she's just Goldensphere adjacent. I'm not sure. And I won't say her name to ask yet, because I leave it to you to be able, I'll tell you how you can find out if she's for that gender war or if she's not for it. So ladies, what I'm telling you is a warning so that we can both, Lord willing, have this goal of no gender war polluting a Goldensphere online, which would preclude it from ever having a community offline in which some kids could actually grow up and maybe some adults could actually retire physically and not have to face this, at least while they're on their home grounds. Facing false accusations, negative stereotyping based on what they couldn't control. Ladies, many of you don't want it. You have some. Amongst your ranks, you are rubbing shoulders with them. They are commenting and supporting you. You are commenting and you are supporting at least one of their channels. Maybe 2. 3 whose names I know. And 2 whose names I forgot, but they don't make content. They only leave comments. But understand, I'll tell you how you can find out who they are without me giving you their names. You'll know. You ain't going to find out overnight, I don't think, but you'll figure it out over time. Maybe a week. It may take some of you 3 years. I just know that if you remember this and you start and you know what to look for and you start looking for it, you'll see it. You'll know who they are better than I do. I'm only, as I've said, it's 5 for me, or 4.5. One's in doubt. But no, 5 definitely want that gender war. 1, I just don't know if she's Goldensphere or not. You will turn around and be able to tell me about some about whom I was unaware. If you take what I'm about to give you. First thing I'll tell you is how you can orient yourself so that they cannot recruit you. If you don't, then they will recruit you and they will have you thinking that some dude started this gender war amongst you and in your jurisdiction, preferably me, because I'll be the easiest scapegoat. So, but then again, in a few years, I probably won't be. Point I'm making is they will sit up and recruit you and have you thinking it was men that started it again. What you'll have to do to get your mindset oriented to where they cannot recruit you is you will have to de-westernize. By that, what I mean is that you will have to sort of reorient yourself when it comes to gender relations to where you take one of two things. Either you pay the cost in order for you to be the boss, independently or in a relationship. If you're going to be the boss, you're going to pay the cost. Or you take on the traditional mantra under which he pays the cost, but he is the boss and you help him out. Those will be options. Now, some would say, well, doesn't the first one sound Western? No, not really, because the Western mindset for the wicked witch of the West, really for Western women in general, that turns them into wicked witches of the West, even if they don't mean to be, is no, he pays the cost and she is the boss. That's actually the Western mindset that you got to throw out. And a lot of that conditioning will be subconscious. You won't know it right off the bat. And that's where the Manosphere will actually come in handy for you, because there are ladies in the Manosphere that will tell you, listen, this is what the bulk of the women in the West are doing, is driving away the men. And they'll tell you this is what the bulk of Western black women are doing, is driving away black men. That's where the Manosphere will actually come in handy for you. But it may be better for you to actually just learn a few things from ladies that come from second or third world nations that you've been taught to believe need your liberation from their men. In actuality, they will teach you how to keep your men. Not by being doormats, because most women in the world ain't going to do that. Where I live, women are not doormats. People think, oh, they're no, they're not. They're absolutely not. They're not doormats here. I already told you how things are already getting out of hand. So they're definitely not doormats. I'm telling you that right now. But when it comes down to it, you ladies are going to have to learn some things from them. And you may already know them, because many of you are already determined to not be that dysfunctional boom shika bon quisha or sophista ratchet sapphire from the larger community from which we're coming. And my hat goes off to you for this. Especially three of you who I'm going to say by name in order to give you credit. See, if I'm going to give names, I like to do it so as to compliment someone and give them credit where it's due. So the 3 names I will give because of positive reasons will be, number 1, Julie Jules. I don't remember you making content yet, but I've seen the comments. And I really think you don't mean any harm. I think you don't mean anything unjust and unfair in what you're looking for. Exoticals United, multiracial movement are the other 2. You and those like you really don't seem to have a motive to just offer men an unfair, lopsided deal that is abnormally good for the ladies and abnormally bad for the men. And therefore, you may not really have to do much except compare notes with others who also don't mean any harm, so that y'all can learn different ways to keep your men. And it's really not that difficult conceptually to keep the men. It's just that it's difficult to untrain, if you've been trained, to run your men off. like Boom Shika and Bonquisha and Sophistiratchet Sapphire have run off their men. The reason I'm mentioning this risk of a gender war spilling over is because if it does, that's exactly what the hell will happen. The men with whom you want to build a community, hopefully offline one day, will be run off if this gender war spills over. And if it does not, then we won't be run off. I should say they, because there are many who still live there in the U.S. and Canada with you, whereas I don't live in the West anymore, let alone North America. And so, plus I'm already married, and most of you all are against polygyny. And that's one thing that will have to change. It is, unfortunately. But don't worry. Do what I say, the rest will take care of itself. I've already said you'd have to de-westernize, so we got that ground covered. Now you'd have to start looking for the ones that are going to drag this gender war into the Goldensphere. And when I tell you that and I finish, then I'll be done. You will know who they are when you see the coin that they offer. Now every coin's got two sides, so I'll give it to you side by side. On one side, they will be very quick to talk about what men need to do, even in the context of a Goldensphere, what golden or LSM men need to do. And then they will not talk about what golden or LSM women need to do, and they won't welcome such talk. And they will talk about what they don't need to do. And we'll talk about what golden or LSM men owe. And then in the same comment or in different comments on different days, they will talk about what nobody owes golden or LSM men in exchange. They will, in fact, construct a coin that once the two faces are stamped and pressed are a abnormally, lopsidedly, unfairly harsh deal for men and an easy deal for them. They will then, that will be the exact same mistake that the wider black community from which we come wound up making. Not, I shouldn't even say the wider black community, but the wider black gynocracy full of hypocrisy from which ladies are coming will have made, that drove away their men, starting with the men they most want. There will be no need to hold golden men accountable as a whole for anything. I know that sounds one-sided again, but there really won't be. I'll tell you why. There will be a need not even to hold golden women accountable per se. There won't really be one, because you've already said we're going to defect so as to not bring in that same dysfunction that she had. But what they will do is they will start pointing the fingers at the men, and they won't have anything to say to the ladies. We ain't got time for that either. Now, as for why it is that there will be no need to point the fingers at the men in the golden community, the reason is the same reason that golden and LSM men have for being in both the Manosphere and in the Goldensphere. And that is very simple. When you take shade out of it, the equation, and I'm talking about the black and admixed black populations, when you take shade out of the equation, non-negatively stereotypical black men were the ones that had the games played on them. There's one brother, Muslim fella, shout out to you, bro. Assalamu alaikum. You know who you are when you hear this. And he's actually from the Gulf Coast. He's from a city with which I'm quite familiar. SYSBM now. Had, when he, like me, left his hometown to go to Atlanta for college, had a situation in which his girlfriend back in his hometown tried to play him. While he was doing his first semester in Atlanta studying. She got pregnant by someone else, and his sister overheard her talking to her friends about how she was going to have him, thinking that he was the dad, by giving him some when he went back to his hometown to visit for Thanksgiving or Christmas, whichever one. So sure enough, she called him over and tried to throw some at him, and he said, I'm gonna have to pass, sweetie. And she tried even hard, and he was like, wait a minute, what's the reason for this? And of course, she had to just accept that she was going to have the baby, but she wasn't going to be able to convince him that it was his because he didn't lay down with her. She tried that game on him. He had left his hometown to go study in Atlanta. He was 18 or 19 when this game was tried on him. He is not Golden or LS or M, as far as we know. He is non-negatively stereotypical. He's a bro with a good head on his shoulders, studied, that sort of thing. That's who he is. That's what he is. He doesn't fit the stereotypes. He was 18 or 19 when she tried this with him. Golden or LSM men have these games started with us from 1991, no, let's say 1990 until. So what this means is, and I was beginning my teens during those years. So what I'm saying to you is that we have experience with the games that are being played on Western men in general right now. We have experience with them started frequently. First and most frequently, they started with us 14 and 15, and they continued and they were repeated again and again and again. Whether it's just simply being stood up, or it is paternity fraud attempts, extortion attempts, lying, false accusations, hyper scrutiny. These things were leveled at us first and most frequently. So if you really want to know the truth, when your average Western European derived man or most bros were learning about the games that were being played on them commonly with the advent of social media, we already knew most of these games. Some men have had paternity fraud done on them. Others have been stood up, or they've been used for free meals a few times. But Golden and LSM men in general have most of these games attempted on them back to back. So we have every reason to be in the Manosphere, because remember, the Manosphere is older than the Goldensphere. It's been around for a while, long before I knew about it. Remember that. Now the Goldensphere pops up. It is relatively new. There is opportunity, chances for it to avoid the same mistakes as the larger black community from which we come. So the right thing for us to do is to be militant and one-sided as I am in the Manosphere. Not because I'm that way that I'm saying it's right, but rather I'm that way because I can see that it's right. And then to be willing to help with the Goldensphere if we know about it and are in it, and not drag this gender war into it because the Goldensphere has not earned it or deserved it yet as a whole. And it is in those interests that, ladies, I'm telling you what I told you. Not warlike interest. Not even interest in men getting over on ladies per se, but it is in the interest of course, women not getting over on men in any community, and therefore not starting a gender war that I'm sharing this with you. This is not just for men's benefit that I'm telling you this. This is for the collective benefit. Because I do believe that if you can set something up offline, whether it is a subset of the black community, which many of you say is not realistic or tenable, or it is a defection, or it is an adjacent neighbor to the black community, whichever one it is, however you decide, and you can set up a place in which you no longer have to be falsely accused where you live of things you did not do and others may or may not have done because of how you look. And children don't even have to grow up with that experience, at least while they're in their own residential areas. Then I am in favor of this. Your cause is right. It is just. and I want to see it succeed. My only question is it a separate category demographically? Is it a subcategory? Is it an adjacent category? Geographically, is it adjacent, neighboring, or completely independent, or within the confines of black community, whichever one's best? Those are the things y'all will be working out because you live there, and I'm not really in a position to tell you which ones to do. But the safety for the adults and the kids alike is something that I support, in which I believe. It is why I've always maintained that that black folks should not make it a goal to go and live around a bunch of white folk. Even when we get money, I've always maintained that. Why? Because even when you are upper and middle class and something turns up missing from somebody's house, guess who they say the little thief is? You understand? Same thing in the case of the black community, if it is overwhelmed by its own diversity, or if its population diversity is overwhelming because you got actually truly non-black elements in it, however you want to describe it, whichever the case is. I know that whoever is in the minority will be the easiest to blame for certain things. I know because I've been one of those that got falsely accused, because it seemed easy to do and it seemed somewhat believable based on not only a strange appearance, but even based on, due to a strange appearance, a lack of dates. Oh, yeah. Yep. Some even told my parents that the reasons why mutual friends of theirs had asked me to babysit kids, or had asked my parents if I could babysit kids. I didn't know about this till later. But maybe two couples asked, no, apparently it was one. One that asked my parents if I could babysit their kids. My parents never even told me about it. Mutual friends came and told my parents that the reason was because some kids were starting some rumors, and including my name in them, that I would have a weakness and a predilection for young kids because I wasn't out dating girls. Mind you, apparently I was in middle school or early high school at the time, young enough to not be dating. That didn't matter. They could put it on me. It could make them seem bigger and feel better about themselves. So they did this. And the parents, instead of saying, or the parents of these smaller, younger children who had nothing to do with the rumors, instead of saying, damn, you need to go and check your kids for saying these things about others without any proof, instead turn around and said, oh, this will be great. We can ask the Mind couple to send their son to babysit, and then we can tell our kids what to say and sue the hell out of them. And so some mutual friends came and said, that's how these folks get down, and that's why. And so I would say, don't let black go and babysit, even for extra money. And my parents never told me about this at that time. They told me years later what went on. Now, as far as the rumors, I knew of another rumor that had been spread, and everybody has some rumor about them at some point, but I didn't know that it got this bad. I didn't know that was one until later. And see, that actually had an effect even in my adulthood, and I'll tell you why. When I became a father and I visited my hometown, I, of course, realized later on after the fact that, and this was not the men, this was largely the ladies. Some of them my mother's age, some my age, would watch how I was with my kids, because if I didn't show affection, then it was because I was stuck up and conceited and wouldn't show affection even to my own kids. And if I did show them such, then I needed to be watched out for. They were looking for stuff, which I found out later. I'm not the only one that's had to deal with this. because my situation has actually turned out to be fairly mild compared to what some others have had to face. That's why I mention it. So others actually going through worse. They've actually had to talk to detectives or show somebody some evidence that an accuser's lying, making stuff up. It's been like that. So I understand the need for the space that you want to set up. And therefore, I understand the importance of a war you're attempting to leave behind not following you. And it is for that reason that I was motivated to pick this up and start to record. But you're going to have to watch for these things coming from inside of your own ranks. They are the ones that will threaten to drag this war with them, not us, not me, not us men. Don't worry. We men will talk in private at times, and we'll be ostracizing or diminutizing men that try to drag this stuff in with them. There is one man that has said, man, I'm getting sick and tired of listening to women in general. But he's not trying to bring in a war. Believe that. And I'll keep an eye on him, but I seriously doubt it. Besides, he said something once that I'm pretty sure got him monitored and maybe surveilled. Only because I've already been investigated before, back when I lived in the States. And of course, I didn't do anything, and this was pretty obvious. That being said, I hope this really helps. Thank you for listening. This has been another Black Mind, Black Service announcement.